Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me for this Corona Job Retention Scheme webinar. My name's Nick Butler. I understand that this is probably one of the most popular webinars we've ever run. Can't imagine why, so no pressure on me. For those of you who don't know me, as I say, I'm Nick Butler. I'm a partner at James Cooper Cresta, and I also have day-to-day responsibility for running JC Payroll Services, James Cooper's very own payroll bureau. So what I will do today is I'm going to go through and tell you what the scheme is. I then want to confirm what employees and employers can be included. We'll look at how you can make a claim, or sorry, how much you can claim. I need to have a little look at salary sacrifice. There are still some grey areas, and this is certainly one of them. I thought it useful that we'll do some examples. We'll let you know how to make the claim and also let you know what you need to do after the claim is made. So the screens are quite full. I'm sure that a lot of this you've already seen. I'll probably take about 13 minutes or so, not being precise, to run through my slides, and then you'll have a good quarter of an hour, 20-minute session for any Q&As. We've had some through already. So without any more ado. So what is the scheme? Well, essentially, it is a grant that the government are giving for any employer that has been seriously impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. You can claim up to 80% of your monthly wage costs per employee, up to a cap of £2,500. Plus, you can claim the associated employer's national insurance contribution and the employer's minimum auto-enrolment pension contribution on that wage also. And when we get into this later, you'll see that the minimum automatic enrolment employer's pension contribution may not be the same as your actual employer's pension contribution, but it's the amount you can claim. So the scheme is a temporary scheme, initially for 3 months, and it can be backdated to March. Now that's the first grey area, an area that I've had lots of emails about the last couple of weeks. What you can't do is decide, okay, I think I want to put everyone on furlough from the 1st of March and claim from then. You can only furlough an employee and therefore make a claim from the period that they did not work for you. Now the announcement was 22nd of March. A lot of people have been furloughing from around the 25th of March, and actually a whole heap more, probably the majority of people that we've seen coming through have said, well, March is nearly over, I've not had a big impact, however, I'm going to furlough from April. The decision as to how to do it and when to do it is entirely down to the employer. And as it's a grant, another point that is slightly grey in people's minds is that the assumption is that the payroll and the grant must match. That isn't true, and that's why the Chancellor said that employers can top up to normal pay. What they can't do is claim 100% of normal pay. It's only the claim that it's 80% of normal pay up to a maximum of £2,500. So that's the scheme. The employers that can claim, well, essentially it is all UK employers, as long as they've had an active PAYE scheme in place on or before the 28th of February. They must have a UK bank account, and the reason for that is that the HMRC will reimburse the claim directly to a UK bank account. And they must be enrolled for PAYE online. Now, that was released this week, and that again has caused a little bit of confusion with people. Essentially what that means is if you use an agent or a bureau, they will use a different method. If you do a payroll in-house, or you've ever had government gateway login credentials, so you can go in, you can look at your VAT and your PAYE. That is what they mean by enrolled for PAYE online. So some people may have done it for VAT because obviously making tax digital and the like. If you haven't got it for PAYE, you can go in there and quickly add PAYE to your online credentials, as it were. So it's all UK employers. The government are not expecting many public sector organisations to apply, basically because most will continue to receive central funding for their staff. And it also should be said that that will affect some public, non-public employers who do receive public funding for staff. They also shouldn't be claiming under this scheme. So which employees can be included? The top 3 bullets here, and I will run through bullets, which is against my normal presenting style, but there's a lot of stuff here. The top 3 represent a thing that's confused a lot of people. So employees have to be on the payroll on or before the 28th of February 2020. Employees who you made redundant or stopped working for you before the 28th of February can now be re-employed and furloughed. Now you're doing that as a favour really, because you have no intention of re-employing them as an employee. The reason the government is saying you can do that is because of bullet point 3 is that anyone that was hired after the 28th of February cannot be furloughed. So the hope there is that someone's gone to a new job on the 29th, been told that they can't be furloughed, they're going not to go to be paid, and that the old employer then will take them back on and furlough them. I can't see it happening a great deal, but it is another measure the Chancellor has taken to try and help people. An employee cannot work for you whilst they're furloughed. That's a really big one, and we've had a lot of questions. Can people work part-time? Can they do a little bit? Can they do work that doesn't generate income? The answer is no, they can't work for you at all. The only thing they can do is attend training courses, and during the period of the training course you must pay at least the national minimum wage. That's an important point, because the furlough pay is a percentage or a reduction in normal pay, the amount you can claim, and therefore the argument could have been my pay is now below national minimum wage. National minimum wage does not apply to furlough pay, so don't worry about that one. But if you have people on training courses, you must make up to at least minimum wage. I've already answered or covered point 5 there, that if you have people who, if you reduce pay due to how the pandemic has affected your business, you can't claim furlough for them on or on the portion of pay that you've asked them to reduce. You would have to get them to stop working for you altogether, enable for you to claim the furlough pay. So it's very clear, a furloughed worker cannot work for the business. Until we get to salaried directors, you can furlough salaried directors. This was very great to begin with and caused a lot of anxiety to directors. Yes, you can furlough a director. Even one that is paid up to the LEL on a monthly basis, which we know that there are. But a director can only perform duties of an officer of a company. They can't go out and make money or maintain the business. So that's quite clear. I've got a little brief legal mention in here. It's a very grey area with payroll bureaus, advisors and us accountants, because we deal with payroll, we deal with other things. What we're not allowed to do is give employment or legal advice. So what I should just point out here is that employers must discuss the furlough arrangements with their employees, and it is a contractual change. Indeed, the revenue will almost certainly ask you to confirm on the claim portal when it's up. There'll probably be a tick box or something that says you have made a contractual change to these employees. So if you haven't, and you're thinking of furloughing and you didn't consider this, you need to do that. Unfortunately, James Cooper Crescent can't help you with that because we're not lawyers, but you need to speak to your legal representatives and get some form of contractual change made with your employees. That's very important, I would suggest. During the period of furlough, employment equality and discrimination laws all still apply, so be careful. Now, we have had questions in the past coming through about discrimination laws and how do you decide who to furlough. My honest opinion on that, and it is only an opinion because it's not legal advice, is that you need to decide on a business need basis. But you must keep all of your records, who you furloughed, why you furloughed them, and that will become apparent later on. And when the portal is released, what you need to keep. It shouldn't be too bad, but you'll need to keep them for 5 years. So how much can you claim? This is obviously the bit that most people want to know. Well, it's 80% of an employee's wage up to a maximum of £2,500 per employee. So the scheme, as I said, is a grant, and I'm quite keen to point this out to employers. I've had a lot of questions. There will be people who are severely affected by the pandemic who simply say, I need to make my payroll match the claim so that the cost to me is zero or incredibly small. And that's fine. You can do that. Again, it's a contractual change, but there is nothing to say that you could pay full pay and then make the claim of what you can claim, which is the 80% up to a maximum of 2,500. You must pro rata the grant. The revenue will not do this. So if you do a claim and it's for half a month, then or half of a month that you did the payroll was full pay, half was furloughed, you would have to furlough the pro rata the furlough, not just put in a month's pay worth of furlough. And the minimum claim period is 3 weeks. Full and part-time staff, now even if they get overtime, I would suggest, but full and part-time staff, salaried staff, you'll be able to claim the 80% of the employee's salary as at the 28th of February. There have been comments about pay rises given in March, and there's various views with commentators around that you should include those or you shouldn't include them. All I can do is confirm what the revenues rules are at the moment. I'm sure as this has changed a couple of times over the few weeks, we may get clarity on some of these grayer areas. But as it stands at the moment, you use February's pay effectively as your monthly reference pay. An employee whose pay varies, so an hourly paid, and that covers most people, 0 hours, etc., hourly piecework and the like, you use an average of 12-month claim, which is the highest of the same month's earnings from the previous year. So if you're doing the April payroll, it's April 2019, or you use the average earnings for the entire 2019-20 tax year, whichever is the higher figure you can use as the reference salary from which you work out the 80%. Now, an update that we had this week was originally it was base pay and no overtime, etc., no fees, allowances, and whatnot. The government have now said that actually it's anything that is regular payments you're obliged to pay when working out your claim. So when you're working out your reference pay, the amount that you would then pay 80% or the maximum cap of 2.5%, you can include in that past overtime, wages, fees, and compulsory commission. Not discretionary bonuses, tips, and discretionary commission payments. So you should exclude those. Now, in addition to the furlough pay, you can also claim for the employer's national insurance on the furlough pay claims. You can also claim the employer's pension contribution based upon the auto enrolment minimum, which is, if you don't know, 3% of earnings between the national insurance lower earnings limit and the national insurance earnings upper limit. I'm trying not to be too technical. You cannot claim the employer's NIC for any top-up, and the employer pension, if your scheme is, for example, 5% of full pay, that's what you must process, otherwise you'll be in breach of contract and pension law, but you will only be able to claim 3%, as I just explained. Now, what you might find then is if people are trying to align the payroll to the grant so that the cost is as low as possible, there still will be a small liability potentially of employers' pension costs between actual and grant claimable that the employer will bear the cost on, but it should be quite small. unless you've got a very generous pension contribution. Now, I need to mention salary sacrifice. Salary sacrifice, this and how it, particularly how it affects pension, is quite a grey area, and we're having trouble getting any particularly professional, shall we say, confirmation. So this is all down to interpretation. What I can say is what my screens represent is the best interpretation that we currently have at the moment, and I've checked with the pension industry, and I know that there's only one provider that will confirm how they interpret the rules, and they agree with our interpretation. So let's work through this. So if you've benefits provided through salary sacrifice, including pensions, the reduced tax rate should not be included in the reference salary. So if someone's salary before their salary sacrifice is 30 and they sacrifice 2,500, these are annual figures, then 27,500 becomes the reference pay. And then you can work that through that the furlough pay would be 27,500 divided by 12 times 80% is £1,833.33. Now, the grey bit, I think most of that is accepted. The grey bit is that the salary sacrifice has not been included in the reference pay, so no sacrifice deduction is required in the payroll. It would be unfair to reduce the reference pay by the amount that you would sacrifice and then to process a deduction for sacrifice also in the payroll. Both us and Scottish Widow think that maybe we should use the analogy of an SNP calculation where an employer no longer makes a contribution, but the employer still does. This may well change in the future as clarity comes through, but this is our interpretation for now. Don't worry, I've got some examples in a moment. In fact, here's the first example now. So this is a reasonably simple one. This is Joe Blogg's salary is 40,000. So 40,000 equates to a normal pay of 3,333.33, 80% of which is 2,666.67. That breaks the cap of 2,500. So the furlough pay for this individual, Joe's going to get £2,500. Joe's nothing to do with salary sacrifice, so this is quite simple. The employer NIC, therefore, can be claimed 100% of the NI can be claimed on the 2,500. So all of the examples provided out of the revenue use or apply the full earnings threshold to the furlough first. The top up would then be subject to the full 13.8% of employers. So your claim will be the furlough pay, £2,500, minus the employer's earnings threshold, which is £732 from April. 1768, therefore, is nickable pay, and the employer will have to pay, or the employer NIC that will run through the payroll, would be £243.98, fully claimable under the scheme. The employer's pension, again, this is worked out on the auto enrolment minimums, or is 2.5 minus the lower earnings limit, which from April is £520. 1,980 is therefore pensionable pay, 3% of which is 59.40. If you add the highlighted areas up, the total claim for Joe Blogs will be 2803.38, and that effectively will go through to the claim portal. Hopefully that's very simple. If you were to align your payroll with that, then your costs would be covered, because of course employee tax and employee NI will be deducted from the 2.5. So there you go, you could have a nice cost neutral solution. If your employer's pension is slightly more than the minimum, there you can see that you will have that little residual that will be a cost to the company, not be able to be claimed. Example 2, and I'm using Joanna this time. Now, Joanna was the person I mentioned in the salary sacrifice slide. So her variable pay, she has variable pay for 1920, total 30. She was normally sacrificed 2,500, so her reference pay is 27,000. I went through earlier and showed you how you would get that from a reference pay down to effectively what we are calling furlough pay of 1833.33. Now, our little caveat there is no sacrifice in payroll, as it's accounted for in the reference pay and the furlough pay calculation. So if we follow exactly the same process as we did before, we can now claim 100% of the employer's national insurance on that 1833 and the pension, the employer's pension based upon the automatic enrolment minimums of 39.40. Again, if you add those highlighted elements up, the claim for Joanna here would be 2024.71. Again, there is almost certainly will be discrepancy for Joanna between the actual employer's pension cost and what is claimable. But apart from that, if you paid the 1833.33 as gross pay, the claim would match almost, apart from the employer's pension, the amount you can recover. If you top up payments, then again, all you could claim, you could pay Joanna, for example, 3,000, but you can only claim based on what I've put on the screen here. So how do you make a claim? This screen was put together yesterday, and this reflects what the revenue have told us so far. That the revenue are working on a dedicated web portal where you will be able to go and make your claims. My slide said it's only pages this time we've been able to process, and here is what you need. Now there has been a slight development about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Didn't make its way through to my slide because we have to go and quantify all of these releases because everybody's releasing different bits of data. But it does look like the revenue, and we've not been told that this is confidential. So I'm happy to release this. That we have been told that the revenue are expecting to launch the portal on the 20th of April. I can also confirm that absolutely no details of which the portal have been released yet. So please resist the temptation of emailing me to ask how it will work. We still don't know, but they have almost suggested that if you look at the bullets on my screen, it almost looks as though they were going to do a totals type of claim. So I'm Joe Bloggs Limited. I furloughed 25 people. Here's the claim period. I want to claim £30,000. We have found out that almost certainly you will have to provide national insurance numbers for the people for the furloughed staff, which does somewhat suggest that potentially the portal will require some employee data, which I think was the initial thought, and then we thought that we may have got out of jail on that one and be able to put in totals. But until details are known, we can't say any more, but that's as up-to-date information as I can give you for the time being. We have been told that the portal should be simple and it will be no telephone support provided. So after you've made a claim, after you've made a claim, you should make a claim either shortly before or during the payroll run. Now, if people are making claims for April, I suggest they probably won't be making a claim on the 20th when the portal's launched anyway. So I think there is plenty of time for us all to get our heads around what the portal means. When we know, we will let you all know through one of our updates. I think the updates have been very, very well received. We've had some brilliant feedback. And we will do that. We will let you know, and we'll also let you know if we as agents can do anything to help you. It's being suggested that certain agents can, certain agents don't. We need clarity. When we have it, we'll let you know. But what is for sure, you can backdate your claim to March, but only where the employee has ceased working for you, or they've terminated and you've subsequently rehired, so you can furlough them. Revenue will have a look at your claim, and if you're eligible, they will pay it back to you. Now, I wouldn't be too worried about if you're eligible. There's been no eligibility criteria provided other than everything that you've seen today and in the press and on the HMRC guidance issued. There's nothing hidden that we in the trade or anyone else knows about. So I think it's safe to say it's a self-service portal. What you claim, you will get, but be mindful that the revenue will have the right to audit any claims going back 5 years. So you need to keep your records for 5 years. I think a very large caveat to that has to be that when the Chancellor first announced this scheme, he was very clear to let it be known that, and I think he knew it would evolve, he was very clear to let people know that nobody would be held accountable for processing this in a way, or interpreting this in a way that turned out quite not to be right. If you make an honest mistake, then I don't think that anything's going to happen detrimental from the revenue. So when we look at salary sacrifice, if what I've shown you is not how you've treated it if you've run your payroll, please don't worry. I think that we'll be okay. If it turns out that there is a standard way that they insist, then we can make adjustments in future, or you can make adjustments in your payroll in future periods. So I think the overriding thing is let's hold the Chancellor to his word that he wanted it to be a simple process, a simple procedure, and he wouldn't hold people accountable for doing things that turned out to be not quite right if we slightly used a different figure than we should have done. Hopefully that makes people feel at ease. So that's all I wanted to speak about with regards to my slides. We now have a good opportunity for you to ask questions. I do have a couple of questions that have come through. So if I do those first, it'll give you time to ask Lizzie for any questions that you might have. And what we'll do, we'll probably run this through until we run out of time. Lizzie will then send round an email thanking you, giving them the notes on the webinar, and at that point, if you have a question that I've not managed to get to, or you've just thought of, let them know, and we can put together a question and answer document and then get that back out to everybody. So let's have a look at the first question. Okay, for historical reasons, our payroll is managed by our local authority. So, although we have an HMRC payroll reference number, we don't have an online account. Can we still register? Yes, you can. If you go to HMRC, in fact, I think on the guidance that has come out from government that said you needed to be registered online had a link on how to do it. But if you go, you can register now. If, as I said earlier, if you are registered and you know you only got VAT, you can go in on there and you can add PAYE. But it takes about 10 days. If you go in and do it now, it shouldn't hold up your claim. Hopefully that one's answered. What is the recommended response if someone doesn't agree to be placed on furlough leave? The honest answer is that is an employment law question, so I'm going to have to decline giving a response. I would say you need to have a word with your lawyers. We've not found that in practice when we've spoken to clients, because people have been pleased that they're furloughed as opposed to being made redundant. But again, the official response to that question would be speak to your lawyer. I think that may be the response to my next question. What is the response to someone that isn't being furloughed but feels discriminated and wants to be placed into the scheme? It is definitely a legal point. As I said, discrimination law is maintained through this. So you need to tread carefully. I think if you as an employer have evaluated your business needs and your staff resource, and you can show that the person was chosen on business requirement, you should be okay. But again, that's one where you should engage with a lawyer. Another question that I've got here, let's have a look. Is it possible to furlough half one's employee staff on the job retention scheme, i.e. for 3 weeks, then take them back for 3 weeks when the other half are furloughed, and so on? Technically, the answer is yes. Your claims process possibly would be a bit of a nightmare, but that's the administrative record of who you furloughed, when, and for what. But actually, no, there's no reason why you can't do that. It certainly would allow a company to claim something as opposed to putting everybody on 50% pay and hours. Let's have a look. Let me go to my. Okay. You have to forgive me because it's very new technology. Do we know for JC payroll if we still plan to pay furloughed staff? If we still pay to furloughed staff their full salary, hence no changes to payroll required. Okay, very simply put, no. We are more than able to put on the payroll software, and people who run in-house payrolls are more than able to set up an element of pay so you can split out furlough and top up. But actually, if you have no intention of reclaiming, if you have no intention of not paying 100% and you're just going to reclaim what you can reclaim, then there is no need to make a change through the payroll. Hopefully that answers that one. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions at present. Let's have a go. There could be some more here. Okay, here we go. So for employees who have got a pay rise in March, which some did, we can only claim 80% of the February payroll. That is my understanding of the interpretation as well. I'm afraid there. I think that was from Damien. Under the rules, under the scheme, that's how I've interpreted it as well. We all thought that it would be the March pay would be pragmatic, but no, we have been told that it will be based upon February's pay. Can an employee working during notice period be placed on furlough? I would suggest not. You've already agreed, or they're working their notice for you. The scheme is designed to protect jobs. I don't think it will cover that. Working my way through. Employee on minimum wage in February can claim 80% of this, or should they pay the new April minimum wage? Minimum wage does not apply to furlough unless you're on training, and therefore I think you can claim 80% of what you paid in February. Let's have a look. Yes, okay. I like this one. My apologies, my audio didn't work during the first half. What are the minimum communication records required for staff? Okay, as I say, the caveat is we're not lawyers, but you should at least be getting a written agreement with them that they understand that you've discussed furlough with them. There's a business need. I would suggest you need, as most adjustments, to have at least a start date of furlough and an agreement that it changes their terms in whichever way it does. But again, my official response is talk to the lawyer, but I think you'll find you can, if you have a written change of particulars, is what you will require. Okay. Are there any caveats in the event of an employee who was not, who were not able to be re-engaged after furlough? I'm afraid I don't understand the question. If you were not able to be re-engaged, there's nothing as you as the employer could do. I believe that employee would be one of the people that would have to rely on a universal credit system. Okay. If JCK run a company's payroll, will the company already be registered online? No, not for this purpose. The bureaus use our own bureau links to the revenue, and we just attach you to them. So if anyone out on the guest list today, the attendee list, uses a bureau, I wouldn't know why it wouldn't be us, but of course it could be. If you do have that, you would need to, the bureau account would not cover you. You would need to go and do your own. You would know if you've registered because you will have government gateway login credentials. So if not, go and register just to be sure. Do we need to notify JC if we still need to plan furlough? Paid furlough staff, their full pay. Okay, I think that's the same as one we did earlier. The answer, of course, is not really, because if you're not going to change the payroll and just do the claim, then there's no point telling payroll to do anything. And I am just reading these out. This one starts, thanks Nick, so I'm going to read it. Appreciate the very clear information provided, especially the unknowns and the uncertainty around the mechanics. Okay, so there's no question there, but thank you to whoever that was. Self-employed, aka sole director of companies. Do we have to provide 3 years accounts, PA workers that are typical, not salaried? I've not got involved with the self-employed part of this. I have to admit. So for this platform today, I'm going to have to pass this question over. But I think there's some guidance on our website with the frequently asked questions. But again, I think these questions are being logged, so perhaps we can take that one offline. My understanding is that dividends are not included. Well, they're definitely not included in furlough, but I can't comment on the self-employed part, I'm afraid. What is the position with regards to holidays booked during the lockdown period? Are staff into? Well, there's two parts to this. There's actually a health and safety law which says you must take the 20 days, because there's that portion of holiday, and then you have the contractual or the company bit, which is the top up. A lot of companies pay 23 days or 24 or whatever it is it might be. The government have relaxed the rules on what you're allowed to carry over, but it very much is, if most people will have taken their 20, so it is a case of, will the company let you take over any of your company that's above the legal minimum of the 20 days for full-time people? You need to speak to your employer about that. Some are happy to let people take it across. Others are taking the view that they'll let people take across a maximum of 2 or 3 days. Again, that's down to you. That legislation as such is not covered in the scheme. If another question. If JCK do our payroll, they are presumably registered online. I think that's the same question, or a different person, but I think we've answered that one now. Do they accrue holiday for bank holidays whilst on furlough? Again, it's employment law, but I've been in payroll long enough to know that actually nobody has a right to a day off on a bank holiday. Not to actually have the day off. I mean, they do have a right to have a day off. It doesn't have to be on that day though. So your employer may say to you, if you are required to work, I may give you another day off. I think if you're furloughed, that means you're already off and therefore not. But I think that that's bordering on a legal challenge, to be technical. Another bank holiday question. Will the bank holiday need to be paid in full for furloughed people? Based upon what we have just gone through with regards to what furlough pay is, my answer to that would be no. You would not pay someone enhancement if there were bank holidays during the period. The bank holiday is a right to a day off. It doesn't have to be on that day, and it certainly isn't a right to be paid any additional money. Okay, so we have a furloughed employee who's paid a salary based on 30 hours per week, which she did, where she has paid overtime. Do we need to average for the overtime hours she has worked in recent months? I would say you are able to determine whether you use the salaried version, which is 80% or £2.5 of their salary, which would exclude those hours. But it sounds like this person works and ordinarily would normally get these, and they're part of their normal pay, and therefore I would say that this person you could work them out on their variable pay basis. So you would do an average, which of course then would include overtime worked. I think we have another 5 minutes or so, so let's keep going. Have I disqualified myself from furlough by listening to you? Oh, okay, I didn't get that at first. I guess what you mean is you've been furloughed, but you're listening to this in case it impacts anything to do with work. I would say the answer is no. Let's treat this as a training session. You're a webinar. I wouldn't say that you're particularly working whilst listening to this. Hopefully I am. So I think that one you would be okay on. Another question, are the revenue expecting employers to make several claims as opposed to just one? Yeah, this is unclear. One that we've been discussing as well is that the minimum period is 3 weeks. That's absolutely fine. But what we haven't seen is that you can do a monthly claim. Now, at the moment, do we have to do a claim every 3 weeks? That would seem an unreasonable burden. My hope is that you can do one as frequently as every 3 weeks, or you can do a monthly claim if you run a monthly. So you're then covering people who run weekly payrolls and monthly. It would be silly to try and split out the monthly cost into 3 weeks at a time. You'd have crossover a period. So we don't know yet. I understand the question, and I hope the answer is 3 weeks will be the minimum claim, but you can do 4-month claims. What are the duties a furlough director can perform? Now, I'm referring to my notes on this one because this would be company secretarial type activities, the production of company accounts, etc., or the filing of company accounts. So no day-to-day work as such. I think the duties are quite small. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Here's a question. I work for a school. We employ our own kitchen staff. We provide meals. Staff who provide meals. They're almost entirely paid for by parents and staff. Do you know we don't receive public funding for most of the costs? Can we apply for the grant? I would say yes. If you run those people through a payroll, that's a PAYE scheme, then you're a UK employer. It depends upon the funding of the. Sorry, it doesn't depend upon the funding. If you're not funded by the state, then I think you can qualify for the furlough. I think that's pretty clear, that one. Let's have a look. If we claimed based on average pay, over what period is the average pay worked out? Hopefully that question was before my presentation. So he says. On one of my slides, it mentioned that you would do the same pay period as last year, or the average of the last tax year. Now, I guess you could there say, well, what happens if someone's only worked for me for 6 months? I would perform the average over the 6 months. That's all you can do. Hopefully that one's okay. Okay. How long after claiming will HMRC pay the grant? I think that's the $60 million question. Their expectation, as far as I understand, is that they want to make it as quickly as possible. These are woolly words and a lot of grey because there's nothing that is holding them to anything. So I think that we don't know the answer. I think is the answer to that one. We just have to wait and see. The fact that they said they would check the claim suggests there's an element of manual intervention, but we just don't know at this time. We're hoping that when the portal is launched on the 20th, that it will tell us a little bit more info. But we may know a little bit more before it's released to you guys. That when we know stuff, we will release it to you. Another question. Where an employee is partway through a pay period, the pro-rata calculation of the reclaim will be quite fiddly. Then need to prorate the furlong salary, the NIC and the pension. I think that you would, are JC Payroll able to review our calculations? I think the answer is no to that one, purely just due to logistics. We ourselves do 25,000 pay slips a month, and we need to pay payrolls. I don't think anyone's going to get in trouble if they make a slight error here. But what I would say is, hopefully my slides demonstrated that you need to work out the furlough pay, and when you make the claim, you apply the employer earnings thresholds to the furlough portion first. So you should be quite simply able to do that. And I've provided to some of our clients a spreadsheet that shows them what they can claim for NI and employer's pension. Hopefully that one answered that one. I think we've got time for one more or a couple more. Let's have a look. Please talk about maternity leave. If you're on leave, there's a difference between leave and pay. If you're on maternity pay, you have to continue maternity pay in the normal way. If you're on maternity leave, and this is probably additional leave, what would be the answer? You actually weren't paid in February, but you do have earnings. I would suggest that you're probably excluded from the scheme, but that may well change. The only guidance that we've had so far is if you're receiving maternity pay, that should continue in the same way. Okay. And one last question. Let's see if we can. Here's the questions. So here we go. What's this? I think we've done that one. I think we may have got to the end of our questions. Yes, I think we have. So I can't see any more questions. I'm just having a quick run through just to see if there are any further questions. No, I think we've gone through all. If you have asked a question and I missed it, I do apologise. But as I say, Lizzie will distribute well, thank you for attending and distribute some notes today, and that'll give you another opportunity to ask any questions. I guess all that remains to be said is that I hope you found it useful today. All the answers aren't known. We need to make the best informed decisions we can. And James Cooper Creston will be able to help you, or intention is to help you as much as we can. And as we know stuff, we will release it to you. So thank you very much for attending today, and take care out there. Thank you. Bye-bye.